I'm doing a little video about running the 3D printer in the hallway. Start off by booting up the computer and then selecting Cura, C-U-R-A. Now we have an empty table. Come over to the File pull-down menu. We'll load a model. The model I'm going to load right now is just a single one of our lighthouses. Now if we right-click, zoom in, we can multiply the object, indicate how many we want. Let's try 25 and see what happens. So there's 25. There's a progress bar next to load model that indicates that it's not only loaded it but analyzed it and determined how it's going to be able to print it. Once the progress bar is done, then you're ready to go to the control panel that is now grayed out. Now it's up again. So it's going to take 12 hours and 48 minutes to do this. We go into the control panel. Control panel looks like this. The Luzbot's been turned on. Once we go to the control panel, it finds it. Now it's ready to go. We're going to control it. We could control it from here, this button, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go and control it from Cura. The first thing I'm going to do is to put a piece of paper in the lower left-hand corner. Just a regular old piece of paper, approximately 3/1000 of an inch. I'll put it right there. Then I'm going to go in Home, the extruder. What that means is it's going to move the table into that corner. It's going to come down and touch off. It's going to come up and then come back down again. And it allows me to see how close that nozzle is. This piece of paper should go through with just a little bit of drag, slightly more than a little bit of drag. And to check the bed leveling, go back over here. What I'm going to do first is check it in the X direction. So I keep picking that outer ring. It starts moving across, It's come out from under, which I didn't want it to do. So I will lift it briefly and bring it under. Now what I want to do is to see if it's still got some drag, which it does. It should just barely be able to push the paper back through. Come back over, we'll go to the Y direction, which is down here. Always get this backwards, because when you do that it moves the bed, not the extruder. And ideally you'd want to go to every corner, see how it does. And I've still got it so that it'll just, actually it doesn't even want to quite, just push it through. Backs up a little bit, but a little bit of effort you can push it back and forth. It means it's approximately 3/1000 of an inch clearance. I'm just going to pick the paper out and go back over here. I'm going to raise the extruder in the Z-axis. So you see what's happening is it's going straight up in the air. Now what I want to do is raise it up a little more. I'll bring it back to the left a little more. Again, I'm doing this with the software on the computer. That's a little more than I really meant to, so I'll put it back. Now we're going to go down, we're going to set the temperature down here. What I found is that 230 degrees works well for ABS, not for PLA. That would be much too hot for PLA. And the bed temperature is recommended is 85 to 110. 85 is highly recommended by Luzbot. I'm going with 90 because that worked really well the last 3 times I did a print. Once you go to set them on the Luzbot controller, I don't know if you can read that or not, but on the left it says number 1 and it says 230 above. That's what we just set it for. Below you see 43, 44. What that's doing is increasing the temperature, or showing you what the temperature is until it gets to 230. On the further right, it shows you the 90 degrees, which is what we set it for, and it's at 71 right now, and eventually it'll warm up. While I'm waiting for it to warm up, we'll just take a look at the machine. The main power switch is on the left. Has to be turned on, of course, for the Luzbot to work. Plus you have to be logged onto that computer. This is a single extruder. We did put a second head on it, but we never could make it work right. So we've got a single extruder head now. So the part down here is what heats the plastic as it goes through. Plastic in this case is red ABS. It's hanging off a spool. Goes up through a sleeve, and then, yes, very fragile. Please do not touch it unless you're actually running it. Sleeve feeds it down in. There are a couple of cogs that allow it to be forced down. So we're going to get those gears. You see the gear in the background. We're going to get that to move in just a minute once the nozzle is up to temperature. We don't want to try to extrude anything through it until the nozzle reaches 230, because it'll push against the unmelted plastic and just wear away a little part of it, and then we'll have to take it apart and put it all back together again. While that's warming up though, I will do a prep for the tray. Problem we've been having with ABS is getting it to adhere to the tray. The tray is glass, it's heated, and it's got a piece of plastic on it, and I've forgotten the type of plastic, but it's an adhesive sheet that you roll out and put on and then clean off. But we're also going to add a little something to it, which is hairspray. So I have a little mask that I've made so that the hairspray doesn't get all over everything. The best for this is the Aqua Net without a scent. It says fresh scent. I don't know, maybe that means it does have a scent. And while you're at it, I always just spray a little in my hair to keep myself from looking terrible. You can see why. I'll just show you a little. I don't know if you're looking at that or not, but I'll turn it. At any rate, so I'm just going to shake the hairspray up, go over here, and just spray a little on the bed as it heats up. And you'll notice that it starts to steam. I don't know if you can see that a little bit, but you know, it's just kind of leveling it off as it does that. I always wait till the bed is heated up. I don't know if that's what other people do or not. Now if we take a look up here, we now have our temperatures already up to the height we wanted for the 90 degrees for the bed and the 230 degrees for the nozzle. Pause. Alright, so now I'm back. So we've got the bed ready to go. Now I didn't have to level it this time, but if it turned out that that paper slid differently at the different corners, I would have had to go through and level it. You do the leveling with that screw right there. So you have to have a special tool that we have in the office for doing that. Now we come back over here. There's a bar called Extrude and Retract. I'm going to go down here to Extrude. I'm going to press it a few times. Then I'll come over here to the extruder, and you'll see that plastic is being extruded out. Do a little more. It's a good idea to run some through it and see if it's going to come out okay. It looks like it's coming out pretty well. It should come out and kind of coil up the way it's doing right now. Now when you're done, when it's done, it'll just stop extruding. What you want to do is take a look at it. You pull it up and really look at it, hold it up to the light, and see if it looks like it's pretty consistent. If it's got little bubbles in it, or if there's hard places, or it doesn't seem perfectly round or smooth, you probably have a temperature problem of some kind. It's hard to tell in the video probably, but that looks pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do now is pause this again, clear that plastic, and then get the print started. Now I'm back over with the computer. Probably it'll be no shock to you to know that I'm just going to pick print. If we look back at the tray itself, I'll just move that out of the way. Here's my tray. I can take and turn and look at that, so you can see what I've got is the number of our little lighthouses all out and arrayed. You might think there's room for some more and I should put them in, but when we reach a certain number of these, the software simply doesn't have the ability to process it. So we're going to start with 25. So I just come over here and pick print. Once I do that, the computer sends information to the Luzbot printer. It's going to come down, and the first thing it's going to do is to home itself. In other words, it's just finding out where the height is, and it makes you a little nervous the first time because you think it's going to go right down through the panel, but as long as you've adjusted everything correctly, it won't. And then the first thing it does is it puts a little moat around everything it's going to be printed. And this it does just so it can start printing. You can check and see is it printing properly or not. What you want to see is a single stream that is flat, not round, and that sticks to the bed. And at this point I usually run my finger over it to see if it's going to release. And then if it feels good there, I use a little clam knife and just see if it's going to pop right off. If it pops right off, it's not sticking enough. This right here feels pretty good. So now it's going to trace around each of those lighthouses, but that's not the actual lighthouse that it's doing now. When I say moat, I mean it's offset from the lighthouse, and again, it's just there to make sure that the printer is printing well, so you can check and see if it looks like it's a good flat, but not too flat, not round. And that's a single layer, so that looks pretty good. You'll notice there's a little bit of stringing between. That's this stuff right here. That sometimes means that the nozzle's too hot, but I think since we've had good luck with 230, I'm going to leave it at that and just let it go. If it was a lot of it, I'd probably turn the temperature down, but I think it's going to resolve itself in the printing process and it'll print just fine. I'm going to pause this now. And while it's printing, we have Paul's Internet of Things display over here, and I have taken advantage of the fact that he has a camera that people can look at from anywhere in the world to see what they're doing as they remotely open and close the door, turn the lighthouse on and off, etc. So there's our lighthouse. There's the door that opens and closes. This is Raspberry Pi. What I've done is I've turned temporarily the camera so it's actually facing the printer. And I've done that because I'm going to be gone over the weekend. I'll be home, and I want to be able to check in and make sure things are going well. Because as you probably noticed over here, this is a 12-hour and 40-minute print, and I don't plan to sit here and watch it the whole time. So I would like to check in once in a while, because if something goes wrong, it normally goes very wrong, and there's plastic everywhere, or something is jammed. So if I look on and see that there's something going on, then I'll just drive in from home and turn the whole thing off, or call somebody and have them fix it. So that's the camera, and that's what we're doing for right now. If you wanted to go and watch this yourself, of course the camera might not be pointed at it, but here's his Internet of Things website. He's got a very easy to remember web address, www.controlfromspace. There's a dot before space as well. I'm trying to get rid of a little glare here, but it's getting a little, there we go. www.controlfrom.space. You go there and you'll see whatever the camera can see, and you'll be able to open and close the door, etc. Now we're back on the table, and you can see it's laying out that moat. I think that's PET now that I think about it, that plastic material. You'll notice there are some tears in the material. It's relatively expensive, this stuff, so I don't like to replace it regularly. Those tears are from people trying to get parts to unstick after they've been created. One trick to helping do that is don't try to take them off a cold bed. Once they're done, make sure the bed temperature is around 50 degrees, and then take them off, and they come off fairly readily then. But over the years, people have scratched up the plastic and torn it. And I leave it that way because it's still working, and it costs us less money. Now it's done with the moat now, and it's actually starting to print the first layer on one of the parts. You can see it's outlining it. And it's gone over several times, so it's now a nice wide part. And when I look at it, that's pretty good. It's a little, well, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And on this printer, pretty good is really my goal. But you can see that it's lying flat. It's not rounded. It seems to be adhering. Nothing's lifting so far. So that's a pretty good start. And you now notice that it's filling in. So the first thing it does is puts the perimeter of the part you're making. Did the circle too for the hole. Then it goes back and it fills in, and it'll do this with one layer Once it gets done with this one, it'll move on to another one and do the same thing and just keep going until all 20 of them are done. Or maybe it was 25. And then the head lifts up in the Z-axis, goes back, and it does the same thing all over again. And then the head lifts up and it does the same thing all over again, and that's why it's going to take 12 hours and 48 minutes.